What's that? Well, we've been working on it. Everybody ought to be graduated. Well, maybe not.
A 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. Nice. And they're super easy. They're not like, yeah, they're not like stranger danger and they're not high maintenance at all. So that would be really cool actually.
Because you fall asleep, they won't run out.
Those hang up in the
They'll take
ceiling?
care of those first.
Again, giving you a sense of the macro sense of what we're doing. Again, we have the continuum of care, and we're kind of talking about how do we move young people to a place that they feel good about themselves, are able to accomplish the things that they want, that they're living fulfilling, healthy lives. And so on that continuum, we talked about the importance of what we had called life discovery and adaptive life skills, so which we're calling social skills, and we're talking really about how do we build self-esteem. And so I'll share my experience, and I want to hear your experience as well. So at New Horizons, we were being really intentional about life discovery. We were really giving kids an opportunity to find out what they were good at, to be creative. We were celebrating them. We would do, we have art exhibits, and we'd celebrate young people. We did these mentorships, and we'd celebrate them when they were done. We just poured all this love into them when we had those celebrations of recognition. We would try to be really specific about things that we liked about them and things that we had seen in them, and to be as specific and genuine as we could. So we're at this point, and so then we have these kids that are coming up to us going, "You built me up. You told me I'm good at these things. You pretty much tell me, you're encouraging me to dream again. You're telling me that I'm good at things. You're telling me, to risk." But they come back to you and you go, "But you know what? I can't find a job." Or you have young people, or they're wanting to get into school, and I wanted to do both this. I don't have the experience in education, but I think they're transferable more with employment. But I wanted, because I know we have folks that are passionate about education that are in here. But there's barriers for me to getting into school or getting a job, and then I see young people that going through this. They do find a job, but they're not able to keep it or stay in it. So we try. And this was actually really, really painful for us because we almost felt like we'd set kids up. So we felt like we got into this place and we're being the cheerleaders, and then there was this sense of really. And then it was really hard for us because we thought, wow. Do we have the power to really help them to get to those next steps? Do we have the capacity? Do we have the resources to get them where they want to go? So, and that was really hard. We have one young person that's in our life, and she's been really candid. She says, "Linda, I have more certificates from completing programs that I can name." She says, "I need a job. I need a job." And that just really, again, struck me. So, and I'm saying, those things benefited her. And she's grown from them. And I know her self-esteem has grown from those things. But there's a point where, to get her to that place where I think she can be, where she wants to be, there's some other points in that continuum. So, in your experience, what are some of the barriers that prevent our young people from getting jobs or getting into school?
Appearance and clothing. Clothing and appearance.
Okay, thank you. Clothing and appearance.
Not having a home.
Homeless.
Not having a cell phone.
There's
Yes.
a lot of value barriers.
Pardon?
Transportation.
Yes, transportation.
Attitude.
Access to health services.
Pardon me, health services?
May need eyeglasses.
Yes.
Hearing aids.
Leona's all over this. Yes.
Proper documentation.
Yes. ID.
A parent to sign you in. Or,
We got homeless.
And I think the cell phone is really important, a way
Yes.
to people to contact them.
Yes. So if I can just stop right there real quickly. So there's an organization in Seattle, and they saw that this was such a critical need. Well, it was voicemail, community voicemail. They set up this huge, it started in Seattle, and they might be here in Fairbanks now, but community voicemail. So if you were homeless, you could go to them, you could set up a whole voicemail system so that people could contact you. But yes, this is key.
We have Lifeline, I think they call it.
Oh, Lifeline, yes. So let's see, so you're homeless, parental permission, is that what you're saying, Leona?
No interview skills.
Yeah, so that's back to that adaptive life skills. Maybe we need to work on that a little bit more.
Previous experience or education, just
Right.
How about the other side of the equation, employer's perception?
Say that again, please.
Employer's perceptions.
Yes, 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 yes.
And let's also think about the economy, and so young people that did have access to restaurant jobs now, college, at least in Seattle, I don't know if that's right, but because the economy is bad, those jobs that normally would be kid-friendly are now, they're adults that are looking for them. So just the economy itself is a barrier.
One of the things, I think this is huge, one of the things that's been huge for our young people is criminal history. If you have a felony, you know, something like Starbucks, they have policies that they can't hire you with a felony.
Drugs.
Yes.
But, you know, drug checks.
Yep,
Even if
Addiction.
it's something.
it's huge.
I think it's it's a given, but like there's no family support at all.
Yes,
Like I mean for real.
yeah, I remember. Yes, John.
self-esteem, they just don't think they can get a job, they don't think they can get into school.
Exactly.
Back to attitude.
Yep.
I was thinking attitude more in the negative, well, I don't want to work,
Right.
Well,
they
still have the attitude,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what we've really found though, and Ron said this economy, this competition for employment, it's really tough. Think about who you know that maybe is, farther away, it's maybe part of the dominant culture that has a hard time finding a job. And then you get a young person and you have an employer that has certain perceptions, you have to have somebody that's willing to give them a chance.
Yep.
Somebody has to be willing to give them a chance. And then especially if they have a felony, if it's been burglary, if it's been stealing. So I have young people that look at me and say, Linda, who is ever going to hire me? So yeah, and in all of that, there's also this attitude, and this is, I think especially for our young people, there's these triggers to authority. So these young people, one of their greatest strengths is that they're survivors. We're going back to, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. So when you're on the street, you have to present authority. You have to, have this bravado. It's part of being a survivor. And so then to be able to code switch and to be intentional about code switching that with a boss or an employer and being humble, and those things are not easy to do.
Expectations of people looking for work.
Yes.
You kind of expect frequently more than you're going to get.
Yeah,
And it
that's
kind of goes to attitude.
Yes. Yes.
You kind of start at the bottom.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how old you are. If you start a new job, you bring experience. Everybody, no matter how old you are. You
No, that's
still have to
really
be willing
important.
to.
This is huge, this sense of expectations. And you're right, Mark, because I think all of us know that you have to, that it takes longer than we often think. And you have to start at the bottom. The challenge is, again, we have young people who, for so long, they've been on the bottom. And so this sense of, and self-esteem is already fragile. So you're telling me I need to start on the bottom. Really? and I think, that's, I can think in my head, that's part of how you grow. You start out there, but that's not a reflection on your identity. Go ahead.
Well, I think it started at the bottom, but I mean, I worked at the stables and I had shovel crap, but I didn't
Right.
eat crap.
Right.
And that's something that, I mean, kids should know. I mean, yeah, you might have to do a crappy job, but that's as far as it goes. You're giving something of value, and the employer's giving you something of value. It's a trade-off. He's not, I mean, you're both earning what you get. And it's an exchange of value, and you don't have to do crap, and you shouldn't, ever. I mean, but it doesn't mean you're rebellious about it.
So what in you gives you the ability to think through that process, Mark?
For me, I think a big part was my mom. I mean, I knew I was always like really smart.
Somebody told you were smart.
Yeah, I mean, it was drilled into me. I mean, there's lots of bad things in my youth, but yeah,
Yes.
my mom drilled it into me, and she actually believed that crap.
See? You had somebody that believed in you, and you knew that just because you were shoveling crap didn't mean you were crap.
Yeah.
But we have a bunch of young people that they associate, if I am shoveling it, that means I am.
Yeah, and that's the part. Well, yeah,
And
that's why we're
those
here.
things do not, this is this continuum again. There takes a lot in this building up and understanding about expectations. It's again, you have been surviving for so long, and now you're telling me that I have to start all over again, and how hard it is for young people that have had a stable family and had parents. It's hard, for me to think, you start at the bottom, you gotta have the patience to work yourself up.
There's a great film, if you want to see this sort of played out, there's a great film called The Wrestler. It's sort of pornographic, but it's a great film. It's only half as bad for you as that one. But the film itself...
Makes it pay more attention.
Right, exactly. The film itself is about a wrestler who has a heart condition and he no longer can wrestle. And so it becomes this horrible thing that he's had this status and identity in the ring, and he's this cool, sexy dude that's a wrestler, and then he finds out, I can't wrestle anymore. So he gets a job at a deli. And he gets the job at the deli. Have you seen the film?
Yeah.
So you get the job. I mean, remember the deli scenes? He gets a job at the deli, and at first, it's like this ring. He's able to interact with the customers, and he's throwing salami, and he's talking to these little old ladies in this way that makes him feel really affirmed. He's like, I got this. And then all of a sudden, the really gross manager is actually looking at porn in his theater or in his office when Mickey Rourke's character walks in. It's gross, and he doesn't get his name right. I mean, you can just see all these things begin to sort of knock away his self-esteem, and then he gets back in the ring and he cuts his finger. And so all of that sort of fragile self-esteem and that inability to code switch and that identity, and it just dissipates. And those two scenes in the deli, I think, do such a great job of just encapsulating all of this, and what we experienced at Street Bean a lot too.
Mike, you had a point.
I didn't see that.
I thought,
I lost it.
I apologize. Will you jump in and just yell it when you think of it again?
Yeah.
It wasn't working.
Oh, what do you think?
You know what though, in that movie
Yes,
too,
please.
there were some external factors. His relationship with his daughter hit a high point and then collapsed. And then
Right, exactly.
the girl that he was in love with, who was a stripper,
Right.
wouldn't give him the honest time of a date.
Right.
And so those other outside influences did
Exactly.
impact him because it added up.
Right.
And he went postal, so to say.
Right. So here you've got a young man, like
Yeah.
many of our young people, that can't go, oh, that's home, and I'm going to go to work, I'm just going to go to work and deliver. Like, they can't, once again, this code switch, they can't. So it's like, how much of my identity do I bring to work? How much of my outside influences do I bring to work? That becomes incredibly difficult. Oh, good job.
So that took us over here to what prevents, barriers to our young folks. And while I'm thinking about this, so I realized, and we had somebody that pointed this out, how I talk about our young folks, our kids, and I'm going to get James writing it down. That for me, I think it's a sense of endearment, and I think of this, our community and this belonging. But somebody pointed out that my intention is to be inclusive, but that if you're a young person that's really that could be a trigger, the sense of, our kids, and, parenting our kids, that there's sense of, that's also something young people need to ask for. It almost sounds like possessive. I'm going to possess you, and I'm going to be this to you. And so we had somebody point that out, so I want to be intentional about saying, I so appreciate that, because again, even in words that I feel like are caring, or that I feel like are positive, if you have, that might not be the same to you. So anyway, I appreciate that person that brought it up, so I want to be careful. So the young people, James, thank you.
Just wanted to add one more thing on the barriers to getting a job.
Yes.
Since we have so much seasonal stuff up here, there's an idea of deadlines as far as when things are available and when things are not, which involves a fair amount of planning and thinking about now and not now.
Planning, yes, that's huge, James. Thank you. And again, that's what's challenging when you're on the street. You know, the sense of planning. And I mean, you're spontaneous. You're just thinking about how you're going to survive that day. You know, thinking about planning about when the season for fishing or whatever it is. You're just trying to think about how you're going to survive today. Yes, by then.
Huge barrier is the opposite of what he said earlier. It's those voices in their head that nobody expects me to keep this job.
Exactly.
You know, my parents already said that I'm useless, and so I'm just fulfilling their prophecy.
Exactly. Exactly. What other people think?
You know what too, like, if you don't have one good positive resource, you know, if everyone you depend on is druggies or absent or unreliable, you know, they're going to just jump on the wagon too.
Right, exactly.
Well, and I love it that you say that, because, so this is what we found at Street Game, which I was, again, such an eye-opener for me. So, young people, where allegiance is. And so here, I think we've given you this great opportunity for this job, and we've created a really cool environment. But when it came down to it, if they had to choose between this group of friends, there was still allegiance, because they were getting their needs still met on the street. And there wasn't the trust that we were going to be able to take care of them. And I get that, because I think sometimes with all good intentions we say, we're going to make this work for you. We're going to figure out a way for you. But in the end they're going, are they really going to figure out a way? Because if I need to sleep somewhere, I need to think about these other folks that I've been hanging with, and I need to know. And there's a sense of, I mean, these are your family. I mean, there's a sense of responsibility. And if you have friends, I think that are, you're still connecting with them. This is not where your allegiance is. And this other stuff all affects it. It's, you know, this one young woman, she was, she'd been up all night and she was doing some other stuff, and it's like, why would you choose to make that decision to do this with so-and-so when you knew you had to be at work on time? Well, because that was more valuable, that was important, that relationship was important. You know, me, I've been drilled into my head my whole life. You know, unless you're vomiting all over the floor, you show up for work on time. You know, it's in my DNA.
What's crazy is that like most of the kids that I work with, and I noticed this when I was like a bad kid, I know.
You're not a bad kid. I'm gonna keep saying that.
When I'm still screwing up, but when I was screwing up hard, like I noticed that one major thing about me that was like just a big deal, even because I would even stress it, and it's big within like game mentality, and it's big within a lot of stuff.
Right.
It's just faithfulness.
Yes.
And so like all my faithfulness was put into like my peers.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
None of it was put into like my mom was like, you need to do this and you need to do that and you need to like stop everything else, and the reality is that like it was like it's like if it came down to like my family and my friends, it's like my friends are my family.
Yes, they are your family. And so isn't it interesting too that even in me talking about that I would discount that somehow, because you need to have an allegiance to your employer. Rather than being able to look at that, my goodness, that is a good quality, to have faithfulness to your friends and your community.
Well, it's also, Linda, let me just point out, I think it's also about what institutions you believe, are you learned or trustworthy.
Yes.
So we have a young woman in our life that is right now, this is a while ago, we had an interaction with her, completely, Section 8 housing, Section 8.
Yes.
So completely violating her Section 8 housing. Has like everybody living with her, grandma, aunties, cousins, nephews, like totally. And so to us, being from the dominant culture, you look at her and go, what are you doing? And she says exactly what she should say. That institution is not reliable. That institution is the federal government. I know that institution sooner or later will fail me. And when it does, every person in this house that I've let live with me is now my network for my next place. So sooner or later, Section 8 will fail. But then I'll need a backup plan. And it's the same thing with kids on the street. It's the same thing with saying, I'm loyal because this institution, I know how to negotiate it. Whether it be street people or whether it be, you know, my community of folks that I live with. But I don't know how to negotiate this street beat thing or this employer. I don't even know if that world is going to be here in 6 weeks or 2 weeks or a week.
Well, I point out something else too about employers.
Yes, Mike.
The average professional stays with an employer for about 5 years, period. And I'm an exception. You know, I've been at the university for a very long time, but it's not the norm now to expect someone to be loyal.
Right.
And so, I mean, they're going in with a, you know, with the it's set against you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, you're asking me to be loyal to these people, but the flip side is not the case. They're expecting me to not be loyal.
And they're expecting the employer not to be loyal to them, because they
Right.
know I screw up, I'm fired.
Yep.
I might as well
Oh,
quit
yeah.
because I'm going to be fired.
Well, you don't even have to screw up. I mean, there's seasonal. We need more. We need less. And we're only going to hire part-time, and so the
Goodness,
workforce
I know that too.
is always changing, and people who are coming on here, they're the ones to go first.
Well,
Exactly.
I knew employers that would hire for freaking 90 days, and as soon as they had to give them benefits, they'd fire them.
Exactly. There's no
There's
loyalty.
some employers that are immoral, and there's some employers that realize their employees are what makes them money, and they're loyal to their employees.
I didn't mean to start a whole thing about employers.
No, because that's where we're going. That's where we're going, Mike. That's totally right. Yes, I know.
Our culture has taught all of us to take everything in within 8 minutes. And then you have a break, because you're 15 to 20, 10 to 15 minutes of commercials.
Yes.
And that translates into our reading time, attention span, that translates into our communication attention span, and it especially translates into, I don't want to do anything that becomes boring,
Yes.
and I don't want to do anything that inconveniences me.
Yes.
And I have nieces and nephews in their early 20s that have gone through 3 and 5 jobs in a year
Right.
because they can't press through the boredom, they can't press through the hard, they can't press through the I don't likes,
Right.
and get past that to a sense of I'm accomplishing something, and I
Yes.
now feel good. Because once it's hard or once it starts being uncomfortable, they back off because that's their pattern.
And the thing, and you're right, and I guess the thing I would say, we only have a few more, I'm going somewhere with this. The thing that I have been most impressed about the young people that have been part of Street Beam is their sense of survival on the street has, they're hard, these young people are hard workers, and I think, and it doesn't change, but I think this sense of, I think expectations, well, let's see, I'm going to stop there because no, this is huge, this sense of expectations and self-gratification, and this has all to do with addiction too, I think. That whole mindset of addiction and getting things right away. And I'm going to stop there because I think this is really important. So, we've been talking a lot in this continuum of care about the atmosphere. And whether it's in your, with Fairbanks Youth Advocates, whether it's the attitude at the school or the court, wherever you are, we've talked a lot about the foundation that we're laying. And I think what I found is the same thing is true with employment. And so think about employment experiences that you all have had that have been positive. And let's just quickly talk about what are some of the characteristics of those. Where you have thrived.
Confidence. When your employers have confidence in you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Other things.
A sense of autonomy.
Sense of autonomy.
yes.
Yeah, that's good right there.
Think about young people that have been surviving all on their own. They've been managing a lot. Okay, other folks.
Clear communication and expectations.
Yes.
Amen.
guidance clear.
How many of you guys have been in jobs where your boss does not communicate clearly and is not clear about expectations? How much does that drive you crazy?
I don't want to see a single Joel's Place hand.
I'm economist, so I don't have to worry about it.
And then you take a young person that's experiencing all these different things. Okay, other things.
Guidance, an attitude that you feel welcome.
Yes.
They want you there, they want to train you,
Yes.
support you.
Yes.
I want you.
Want you.
Well, we know you.
And we,
I mean, there's some that
Oh.
give you a job and come back like 2 weeks later. Nobody's called you, nobody's asked you. I mean, it's like.
I had a
sink or
boss
swim.
once who told me to write my own job description. It was a new job, so I did. Felt really this great sense of autonomy. And
Yes.
then when he had trouble with me, he said, well, I filed that, but I never signed it. So that was your idea of what you were doing, but it's not the idea that I had for your job. And so the clear
That's
communication.
That's
It was-
brilliant.
Gosh. I'll just tell you.
Do they go on to politics?
the challenge with this
No, he
is what I
wants to
find
stop it.
is that this is often hard. It's hard to find employers that are intentional about this, especially for positions where our young people have access to, that are low entry, that don't require a lot of education, that they're willing to take somebody that has a felony.
There's an accepting.
Yes, accepting. You know, I don't know. It's like get the job done. I don't care. I'm not going to be nice to you. I just want you to get it done. And you look at who the young people that we're serving are, and you know, it was just like, no wonder this isn't working. It's hard for me, you know, that has a college degree, that has a pretty good self-esteem, that has a pretty good set of social skills, that has a pretty good set of, you know, concrete skills.
Pretty good husband.
Pretty good husband. You know what?
Let's not go overboard.
I would stay in a job, you know, because of, you know, other things, but I don't want to be someplace that is not like this. It's just, it's oppressive. So, I think that is part of, so all that to say, this is a really critical need. We have, there are folks that are like this though, that have been willing to hire our young people, that have been we have 2 guys that had their own construction company, and they hired 2 of our young people to work with them over a series of 5 years. And we're talking, the other thing is, this is it guys, some of those temporary things, our young people need permanent employment. I mean, how many of you are looking for a part-time job that's just seasonal? Well, okay, you're retired, but I'm sure, you know, if you're young, you're looking for full-time employment.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about a 10-hour internship.
Can
You know?
I
Yes.
interject something?
Yes.
I've worked at several different places, and almost all my employers, for the most part, even the federal government, kind of fell into
They did.
the good stuff. But the place that didn't was the worst place to work in my life was the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It was the most convenient job I ever had.
Well, that's good.
And I'm a survivor.
No, I think about 3 months and I quit.
And you're back. James.
So I noticed that on our list,
Yes.
there's nothing that's put up there about wages, which
Yes, that's
it's
critical.
great if it's
Yes,
a great working
yes,
place,
yes,
but if
yes,
you have to
yes,
have
yes,
2 or
yes,
3
yes.
other jobs, then it's not as helpful.
Yes.
What if you do 2 or 3
I need to
dozen?
look at my list. Yes. I need to conclude. Livable wage. So, this is also huge. So, there are some folks that are able to provide this livable wage, a great work setting, and they're willing to take a risk on a young person that has a criminal history, not a lot of education, and take them under their wing and work with them. But look at all the young people that we're serving. There's a huge need, and so that was how the dream of Street Bean. That was my desire, was I wanted to create, I thought, okay, if nobody's going to hire our young people, then we're going to create a business and we're going to hire them, which was a bigger undertaking than I realized. But my dream was to create a beautiful, beautiful coffee shop where I would want to work, where other people would want to work, where our kids would feel really proud to work there, that we could train them, and that they could feel good about what they were doing, that they could earn a livable wage, that we wouldn't just give them 10 hours a week, that we could give them health benefits, that we could create something that's not just permanent. And then just adding to that, I realized how many of you have been in a place where once you start doing well, your employer comes to you and says, well, you've been here for a year, a couple of years, you're doing well, so now we're going to give somebody else a chance. And I think that's what a lot of job programs are like too. So you get to a point where you're just feeling like, yes, I got this. I'm making a livable wage. I've gotten an apartment. And now you're telling me that it's only 2 years and you're going to give it to somebody else. And because we didn't really know how long we were going to give young people a chance to work, but that was something that was really hard for me. And so what we decided was, as long as our young people are able to continue to grow in leadership and skills, they're moving forward, you can stay there as long as you want. And there's been natural attrition, so new young people are still able to be a part of it. But I think even that philosophy in business, you don't do that in business because they're an asset to you, because they know what they're doing. You don't want to have new people all the time. But again, because we're a nonprofit, there's a lot of problems because funders don't want you just to serve 3 or 4 young people. They want you to serve a lot of people. And so that goes again to what are we trying to accomplish? And for me, it was, I'm willing to do it on a smaller scale if I know that the young people that we're employing at Street Bean are able to get to this continuum where they are feeling good about themselves and supporting themselves. And the young people at Street Bean that have been there have been able to get apartments, they're getting great skills, and it's working. But it takes a lot of resources and time to create jobs. I think the great thing is to find people that are willing to hire kids, and I know that's part of your job, Mark, but it's hard.
I got a question that it seems like most of my success, the people I like work for, small companies.
Yes.
And they really value
yes.
highly.
Yes.
Is that true?
I think it's more personal, and I guess and then with that experience too, when I'm thinking about it, there is a benefit to creating businesses, but it does take a lot of resources. And so again, if you're looking at capacity building, if you can find, if you can breathe this in to employers, this is a real need. This is what young people need, but it's hard to find people. This is their livelihood,
Right.
that are willing to take risks on kids, and I think we're probably time for questions. Kelly.
Just real quick, I don't know about Seattle, but I think we are probably set up better than a lot of communities for chances for kids. Our culture is such that tattoos and piercings are not that big of a deal.
That's another barrier.
My bakers, my dentist, my nurses, they all have tattoos and piercings. It's not a big deal.
But I think it's still a big deal.
And that's a huge asset. That's a huge asset, Kelly.
We have a lot of jobs. We have decent wages. I mean,
A lot of unions.
a lot of unions. I mean, sometimes, here we have part-time filling jobs because, it's just like, do people not want a full-time job?
Yeah. So the access, so maybe then really a lot of the focus for you guys is then the jobs, there's maybe not the barriers, but then how do you continue to build up young people and give them the support to actually allow them to keep those jobs by continuing to deal with some of these issues by living?
I guess you call me old-fashioned, and I love kids, but they also need to learn that there are professions that's just not acceptable.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's just not going to work everywhere.
Right.
And they need to learn that.
Right.
And not to necessarily look down on the employer because they say something to them.
Right.
I mean, I went to a pizza place once, and my waitress had a tongue piercing. That was disgusting to me as I'm sitting there eating. I mean, and I'm not being discriminatory.
For you, that made a difference as a customer.
For that particular setting.
Right.
But I think, so they need to know that in the real world, it's not acceptable everywhere.
Well, this is, I think, what was helpful at Street Bean was that being human service providers for 25 years and then Linda taking on this venture and me getting a chance to be, Linda was the pastor of Street Bean, I was the pastor's wife, I just played the organ. But it was great to play the organ there, it was really fun. But the point being that was the marriage that was really healthy for us, is all of a sudden there became these new bottom lines. Like, you know, I know you got drama going on at home, but you got to show up on time. And that was a very candid conversation. Or guess what? It doesn't matter how hard it is with your girlfriend right now. When you're at the cash register, you have to be friendly. You know, you can't shit on the customers.
Right. And so that's the nuance of it again, is a sense of realism and gentleness. This is not an exact science. And again, you got to show up on time. You got to be present. You know what? You got to do stuff that you don't like to do. But that's what we all have to do.
That's grown up.
Right. So how do you give those real life lessons in a way that young people that have, you know, struggling with their self-esteem can hear and grow from? Sarah?
I'm just curious. I don't know if I'm just blind to it, but I don't see so much a lot of this, and I can't even pinpoint what the problem is. But I hang out at Soap a lot, and a lot of the same youth come to the shelter, and they can't hold a job for more than a month. Usually more than a paycheck. They get their paycheck, and they spend all their money buying pizzas for all their friends, and they never go back. It's that first, they just work for that first paycheck, and then they quit. And I don't, it's that maybe they can't see the future, they can't plan, they don't see that it's going to benefit them any more than the first. But it's, we've just started to, well, I want to see if someone can hold a job for a month.
And that so much comes from, I mean, present orientation. You know, why plan when home is, you know, you can't depend that things are going to, if you are coming from chaos and trauma, you can plan all you want, but your plans can be changed like that if there's chaos and trauma and abuse. And so I think that helps, that present orientation. And I'm going to take care of my friends while we can. Yes,
I see a lot of that in a lot of different ways. And what it seems to me what's happening is, here's somebody who has been, you know, stomped on their whole lives, and now all of a sudden they're not being stomped on in their sunshine, and life is good. They don't believe it. They honestly, they don't believe it. They can't accept it.
You're right. You're
They're
exactly
doing
right.
well at their jobs. Their bosses think that they're great. When one of them gets a job, everyone goes to Carl's Jr. to buy burgers because they want to see them working and they think it's cool.
Yes.
But
so that is so good, Sarah, because this goes us back to this place. So yeah, what do we need to continue to do then? Back on this continuum. So it's not just about a job. So that's what's so nuanced about this. So now we have people that want to give you a job, but you can't keep it. So how do we continue to look at those underlying things that other people go, well, why don't you just keep your job? Just show up on time. It is not that easy. We wish, boy, don't we wish it was, but it's not. So, but there's hope, and I think as we continue to work together as a community, what we're trying to provide is, you know, these are hard issues. These are hard issues to support young people.
And Linda, I would say that you
we're
should
doing
spend,
this as a community.
You should spend some time tomorrow talking about, because I think Street Bean learned some things about sharing vision with kids that kept them bought in ways that's really commendable. And Linda, the kids were very supportive of Linda, and so that idea of loyalty and that idea of buy-in and that idea of I'm participating in a bigger vision. I mean, the kids would even tell you, this is really funny, Linda and I went to Guatemala, I taught a class in Guatemala, so we spent a second week up with our coffee roasters, the folks that are making our coffee. And so Linda took them pictures of Street Bean and showed them the coffee shop. And it was, you know, in translation, what really happened. But these coffee farmers, 8 hours away from Guatemala City, were going, oh, you mean we're helping youth homelessness in Seattle? And the kids at Street Bean, we would tell, you know what, you're actually alleviating poverty in Guatemala. Like, you're participating in this cause. And it became very important to them, this idea of triple bottom lines about environment and justice and building community. And so when they got that vision, not all of them.
Right, because I'm going to say, even in that circumstance, we still saw this. We still saw this loyalty to friends. We still, so it's not, there's not a perfect formula. So we're going to end there. But I think tomorrow, let's talk about what people want to talk about as far as, I mean, I can share a little bit more about Street Bean, but I'd really like, how do we move forward with kind of where we are as a community and